Hello and welcome to the evolution of the reader tag. I was tagged by Charlie Brooke and Nova Novels, so it is high time that I get to this tag. And the original was created by Sprite Book Joy. All three of them will be linked down below, so definitely go check out their channels. Spleen, do not. She has stuck her head through my tripod to drink my water in front of the tripod on the carpeted floor. This is a dangerous situation. Spleen! Hi. Hi. Freedom. There are 4 kind of basic open-ended questions, but this is just a very chatty tag. If the tripod shakes at all, Spleen is suddenly very interested. Unfortunate timing, Spleen, but thank you for your involvement in this video. The first question is, what you read, how has your taste in books evolved? And I feel weird when I say, like, not much. Like, I have obviously ranged from, like, being a child reading children's picture books to reading books as a teen that are, like, teen-based drama stuff to, like, the adult reading that I do now, mostly. Like, I still read some kid stuff, but I read largely adult books now. But I do feel like I've always kind of had similar taste in like what I'm picking up, because I've always liked realistic fiction and I've always liked kind of serious books that are more like dramatic. Like, I haven't liked, you know, light fluffy contemporaries. I've kind of been more drawn towards the like darker dramas in realistic fiction, and like obvious exceptions throughout my reading, but like that has been largely what I've been interested in. So I don't really know how to describe the taste shift there. Like, things I used to like I don't necessarily like anymore. I'm much more sensitive to how topics are handled and like how they're discussed, and if they are discussed with great depth, and or whether they're discussed more shallowly, because that wasn't something that I noticed very much when I was thank you, Spleen. When I was a teenager reading these books. It's like I'm much more aware of like the context now, and I have discovered nonfiction a lot more, I think, as an adult, because I always did read nonfiction, but the nonfiction I read was frequently like either writing books or like political biographies or like history nonfiction, which I'm not saying I read tons of it, but like I did read it pretty regularly. And now as an adult, it's not that I don't read those books, although I definitely don't gravitate towards them as much, but I've discovered like broader nonfiction. Like, I really love creative nonfiction, which I didn't really know it existed until college. I took several creative nonfiction classes that opened me up to like new authors and new styles of writing, and I determined that I really loved creative nonfiction. So that's definitely become a genre that I like a lot more than I used to, but I think it was more just like I wasn't aware of its existence. And then I learned of its existence and was like, yeah, that's cool. I'll read more of that. But I do think overall, the same books that like interested me when I was 15, like the same types of storylines, are still the same storylines that interest me today, which I don't know if that's weird or bad or shows a lack of growth in me as a person. But I've always just liked serious, realistic contemporaries. Or like, not contemporaries, but like serious, realistic fiction. It has always been like my bread and butter of reading. And then like thrillers and nonfiction and everything else I have read as well, and like fantasy, and like I've read a lot, but like the serious realistic fiction has always kind of been my main thing for like since I was a young child. Question 2, how you read. Has the format of your reading changed much? Again, not really. I do read mostly physical books. I like reading from my shelves. I own a lot of books. I'm lucky to live in an area that has a lot of like thrift shops and used books and like access to very, very cheap quantities, mass quantities of books, which is how I have so many. And that is like my preferred reading. Any other reading that I do outside of physical, to me, feels like extra. I listen to audiobooks some. It mostly depends on my current life situation. I listen to audiobooks while I'm driving, and that's pretty much the only time I listen to them, because I found that that's the only time that I'm able to like concentrate on the audiobook while still doing other things, and I found that I get very distracted trying to listen to audiobooks and do anything else. So if I have a lengthy commute to work, or if I'm planning on going on a road trip, I will listen to audiobooks, but otherwise they're not something I really gravitate towards much. And the other thing is ebooks. I last year started reading a lot of ebooks at work, like on the clock at my job, because I was very checked out of that job, and it was something easy I could do that did not require doing work. So I read a lot of ebooks that way, but I usually only read ebooks when I don't have access to my physical books, which again is not most of the time. So if I'm doing something or going on a trip or whatever, I will probably read ebooks. Like, I will use them as like a backup to physical books, but I usually still only read physical. So again, potentially just a sign of the lack of growth in myself as a person. Question 3. How much do you read? Do you read more or less than previously? When do you read? Has how often you read changed? So, numerous questions. I guess I'll start. When I was like a child, my parents read to me a lot. Like, I remember my parents reading to me like all the time, and I was always really excited for them to read to me. And then as I aged up into like reading like tiny chapter books on my own, like Babysitter's Club and stuff like that, I read constantly. And then I got to middle school and high school and started reading a lot of YA and some adult books and read constantly. So we're seeing a trend here. And then I got to college, and for whatever reason, college crushed my soul. Did not do great in college, didn't finish, didn't read basically any books the entire time I was in college. I think most of the books I read were like, I read a couple of books for my fantasy literature course, and I may have read like 2 books for fun in the 3 years I was in college. So college crushed my soul. And then I got out of college, and about 5 months after I dropped out, I started reading again, and I picked up basically all of the books that were assigned reading the final year that I was there. So I basically read all of those and were like, some of these are really good. And then I just started reading more. And then I got to a point in my life where things were kind of in a downturn. I just lost my job and crashed my car and was kind of healing from that, and started my Booktube channel because I was bored, which was fun, and started reading more and more. And then I had a weird year reading when COVID hit. There's some time there where I didn't read much at all. I was lucky if I was getting like 2 books a month read. I wasn't active on Booktube. And since then I've come back and read more. And I read basically regularly now. Not constantly like when I was younger. Like when I was younger, I was reading like 250, 300 books a year easy. Like, that wasn't like me just trying to read things faster to get things done. That was me just reading because it was my main hobby. It was what I enjoyed. And the months where I wasn't reading a lot of books, I was reading a lot of fan fiction. So I was just reading obscene quantities of whatever, and it was a really good time. And now as an adult, I find that I have other hobbies. Like, Booktube has honestly cut into my reading time, like not in a bad way. I really love Booktube, but it has been like, I'm putting time into watching Booktube. I'm putting time into filming videos. Like right now, I'm putting time into editing those videos and posting and like being active in Booktube communities. And that takes time away from reading. Like, again, not in a negative way. It's just that like I now have more things that I can do to fill my spare time. So I'm not just reading because that's all I can do. Because that's how it was when I was a kid. It was like I didn't live within walking distance of any friends. Like, when I wasn't at school or at like prearranged activities, I was basically just reading 24/7. So as an adult, I do read less, but I read still a lot, and I feel like a more enjoyable amount for me because I have other things that are enjoyable filling my time as well. The only question I didn't answer in that long spiel, I think, was when do you read, which is basically whenever. Right now I'm unemployed, so this is a very strange time in my life to talk about my habits because right now I have none. Like, it's been a couple of weeks. I will probably have another job soon, but right now it's just like I do whatever I want whenever I want because I have no responsibilities, which is great. So right now it's kind of whenever. I read probably mostly when I'm kind of like alone, like during the day when like there's no one to kind of hang out with or talk to, or like there's nothing really scheduled in my life, I like to read in the afternoon or the morning, or just like kind of chill and just read for a while. And then I used to read a lot before bed. I'd like get into bed with a book and like read for a couple of hours, but I turned into a very early morning person. So it's like I get in bed at 9 p.m. I'm asleep by like 9:05, waking up at like 5 in the morning. Naturally, not with an alarm. So no longer a reading at night person, which I miss. But yeah, I'll pretty much read whenever at this point. Question 4, how has Booktube changed you as a reader? I think the biggest thing that Booktube has changed for me is just like how I find books, because it used to just be random. Like the vast majority of the books I read from probably age like, well, from small childhood through like finding Booktube was just random by like browsing at the library or in thrift stores or bookshops or just like wherever. Like if I wanted to go buy a book at the library, I would just go, not buy a book, if I wanted to buy a book at a bookstore, like I had a gift card, I would just go and browse books until I found something that interested me. If I wanted to go check out books from the library, I would just go to the sections I wanted and browse through them and until I found something I wanted. Like that was how I pretty much always found books. So coming to Booktube was a little bit weird because now I'm getting all these recommendations of things that sound really good, of things that like I may not have found because I didn't always read the most popular things, because the most popular things were usually not sitting on the shelves at the library. They were, you know, checked out. There were holds lists for them. Like I just wouldn't have seen those things necessarily. So I get a lot more like pointed recommendations now, which is nice. I still do browse. Like there are some random stuff in my reading, but I do get a lot more recommendations and I'm more aware of like publishing trends and like what's going on in like the reading community and world and like what other people are thinking of books, because I always like knew people who read. Like my parents were big readers, my friends in school were all nerds like me and big readers, so like it wasn't that I didn't have people in my life who read, I just didn't have people who like wanted to talk about books constantly, who were like aware of kind of contemporary publishing standards, like who really knew what was going on. Like I would occasionally get people who were like, hey, like I just read Twilight, it's 2007, it was dope, let's read it together. And like that was something I experienced. But in terms of just like, Emily Henry is a good example. Her books are always checked out at the library. They have holds list of like 40 people, and it's just because like I never would have heard of her just because I never would have seen her books on the shelves, which I think is a new interesting thing for me, is just being aware of who's popular, even if I'm not reading them, even if I'm not interested in that genre very much. It's broadened my horizons a lot in a really wonderful way. And then just hearing about books that I never would have heard of otherwise, like books that I have to specifically seek out and purchase because my library doesn't have them and I might not see them on the shelf at the bookstore. Like things that I go intentionally buying myself, I think has been so much fun. So I really appreciate Booktube for that. And I think just in general, like having a community changes how you think about books. Because I always thought about books critically. I didn't ever like officially review anything the way I do now, but like it does just like I automatically think about the books I'm reading and my criticisms and praise in a lot more depth than I would have years ago. It's just like a more automatic thing, and I really enjoy that because I like reading books like that. It's really fun to me, and like filming reviews and talking about my reading habits and making bookish friends. And it's just like, I don't know, in general, Booktube's just made reading more of like a social activity for me. Like I still read by myself, but like after I read, there's so many people to talk to and just like so much community and so many events, and like it's really fun, and it's made reading a lot more fun for me. Question 5 is tag some people, which I'm not going to do because I'm lazy and tired, and I apologize for that, but you should do this tag if it interests you because it's a fun tag. So let me know down below what your thoughts are. I don't know, leave a book emoji if you just want to let me know you're here, because I feel like there's not necessarily a lot of discussion room in the comments for this video. So leave a book emoji if you just want to let me know you were here. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all again soon.